Oh, good evening to everybody that's on so far. We still have some people coming in, but we wanted to kick things off in the with respect to people on the school night, work night. My name is Ismael El-Amin. Most of us know at least one of us co-founders here. So Donald and I have been cooking up this startup for the last 3.5 years, and we are at a point now of reaching out to the public to start with our friends and family and just give an overview and also an update on where we are and talk about the big concept of investing. So I'm half of the founders based out of Chicago, came up through Chicago Public Schools, Whitney Young, where I met Camille. Most of you all know her. Went on to Princeton University. We have some people on the call from our university, so thank you for that. I've been working in IT for the last 18 years and also raising 3 kids. And that's majority of the reason why we're here are those 3 kids. We'll kick it over to Donald for a quick introduction, and then we'll get things on the road.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donald Scott II. I am a co-founder with Ismael at PiggyBack Network. I have 3 boys, married. I spend a decent amount of time traveling around to make sure that they are entertained. And I think, as we prepare to talk through what PiggyBack Network represents, the expectation is that we are building a solution that supports the need that we feel every day, or that talks to a challenge and a pain point that we feel every day. So that was a quick intro. What I want to do is play a video, though, to start so that everyone is on the same page, and then we'll start walking through a handful of slides. All right, so if you cannot, I'm gonna go on mute. I don't know if I can go on mute. I'm gonna play this video, but if you can't hear it, let me know.
For many parents, these days our car is our home away from home, as the busy schedule of the kid overlaps with the busy schedule of our day, and sprinkle in the needs of the household and perhaps even a chance to have a social life, there just aren't enough hours in the day. PiggyBack offers a solution, a network of trustworthy and reliable parents who can help with your child transportation needs at an affordable price. We don't hire professional drivers. Our PiggyBack parent members are our PiggyBack drivers. First and foremost, PiggyBack members go through extensive local and national criminal background checks. Once clear, PiggyBack members identify their driving routes. This could be home to school or school to after-school activities, or after-school activities back home. Where one PiggyBack member is requesting a ride, there are other members offering rides along that same route. PiggyBack brings these parents together and gives them a chance to meet in person to see if they click. If both sides agree, they begin scheduling their rides. What could we all do with an extra afternoon free from driving? One less morning rush hour commute. Let's get to know our neighbors and build trust in the families around us. Let's ensure all children have an opportunity for the best schools and activities. Let's put the community back into your commute. Check out PiggyBack today.
Okay, and so we are all here to talk about PiggyBack Network. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go into presentation mode, and then I'm going to go into mute and hand it off to Rich.
Right, so that was a quick introduction video that we put together just as we were launching back in August. And tonight's discussion is going to be broken up into 3 different parts. The first is going to be 15 minutes to just go over what PiggyBack is, how we got started, some of the thoughts behind it, what we've done so far, and then we're going to give a chance for some Q&A. Anybody that has any insight, any questions, any concerns about what they're hearing. And then we're going to break after that Q&A for a couple of minutes, give people a chance to walk around, handle food, whatever you got to do, hit the bathroom, and then we're going to come back and start talking the investment piece. And we're going to walk through a second deck for the investment piece, and then again have some Q&A questions related to the investment opportunities. So that's the plan. The chat will be open and active if anyone has anything to put in there. Don't feel bad about that. I will not be checking for raised hands, more so for checking for activity in the chat. if something comes up as we're running through the slides and you got to get something off your chest, right? It's very informal. Most of us, know each other at some personal level. We wanted to handpick and start with this group just to make sure, one, we were including the people that we know and love and the opportunity that we're putting out, but two, we trust you guys to throw us honest feedback and, help shape us in the right direction and not send us off. So appreciate you there. All right. The problem statement to the business that we put out there. Donald and I are both raising 3 kids, different states, different cities, different sort of urban settings, but common issues that we kept bumping into was time management, getting the kids from A to B, activities that they're going to be involved in. We both have active spouses, working spouses, and multiple vehicles, but there's still this challenge of how we're going to get kid A from A to B, kid B from B to C, manage all of this stuff and still hold down our jobs, still hold down the social life. So we came up with this theory, families are busy. There's these opportunities to put kids in activities to shape our kids the way our parents shaped us. One of the reasons we met, one of the reasons I ended up at Princeton, one of the reasons I ended up at Whitney Young was the extracurricular activities we were able to get into as kids. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, you had to get into something outside of school if you wanted to become something, and our parents understood that from an early age. So we had access to, gymnastics for me, and it was wood shop, it was football, it was baseball, it was Museum of Science and Industry, all these different things. We want to make sure our kids have those same opportunities. And in this world, parents are busy. We just got off a call with a potential investor, and he's describing his life where he's worked from home for the last 5 years, constantly on important calls. His wife runs her own business, but she takes calls and has to be available at a moment's notice to go to her salon. And when the mom is doing the driving, sometimes she has to lean on the dad. Hey, I can't go pick up our second kid because I just got a call. He's got to stop his work, get off the couch, grab the keys, go pick up the kid, disrupt what he's doing, or either take a call from the car, which lowers the quality of the work that he's doing. And he's literally falling into another one of our many use cases where if the mom were able to dedicate her driving in the morning and say, I'm always available to do drop-offs, she could be a driver for other families. She could offer this extra seat in their car for other families. And that could free her up to not have to work in the afternoons, not have to drive in the afternoons. That way she could take the calls, she could be available, and the husband would be able to take his calls, nobody would be disrupted. So that type of work dynamic is something that we see all over the place. The solution that we came up with is to empower families to locate and coordinate shared rides. Now families can have a platform where they can safely identify other families that say, hey, I'm actually driving the exact same route that you need a ride. Why don't we meet, get to know each other, trust each other? I'll pick up your kid for you. I will give that ride to your child so that you don't have to worry about that ride. And it's an equitable system. I'll get paid in points. You will pay points. Everybody's fair and square. We go about our business. If we like it, we keep scheduling it. If it doesn't work out, it's flexible. We can cancel it out. So this way, we give families a tool to build a network. Now the families are becoming friends. Now the families are becoming a community, and not just people that stare at each other at pickup, people that say hi and buy it at drop off. They're actually becoming ingrained into the. It's going to unlock opportunities for families that mean well, but they can't handle the transportation. They would love to get their kid involved in dance. They would love to get their kid involved in gymnastics, karate, the art studio where their kid's really into painting, but transportation is an issue. This is something that opens up access and opportunity for those guys. Next slide, Donald. So within Chicago, we've got selective schooling. Selective schooling is basically you can take a test and apply to a school that may be out of your neighborhood. And it's one of the things that if you get your child set on the right track early, it can shape which high school they have access to and things like that. There's not always busing available. And busing is a whole nother meeting, because this year we've seen school bus issues that have actually helped PiggyBack out. But for a lot of families, when that school bus route gets cut, they don't have an alternative. They can't afford the opportunities that are out there as far as paid drivers, as far as private vans, and they just don't know the families to reach out and say, are you comfortable driving my kid to and from school? There's also enrichment activities, after school activities. We've got both girls involved in an after school academic activity to help with their math and their reading and language arts, to ensure at this young age that they'll do great on the ACT and SAT. A lot of people have the money for the activities, but transportation to get there is an issue. There's also, in a lot of situations, neighborhood safety work. Can you actually cross those boundaries and get from this street to that street safely? Advanced Donald?
Yeah, I'll jump in and add a little point too, especially around the selective schooling conversation. In Texas, and I would say maybe even in the suburbs, I've never had to deal with trying to transport the children to different schools. But in watching and having conversation while we were talking through PiggyBack Network and seeing Ish have to talk about and decide whether or not the kids would go to this North Side school, or one of them's going to one school and another's going to another school closer on the South Side. And the choice that has to be made, especially around testing, right? And the concept that inside of our society, as a function of our education culture, we're creating, or we haven't even created, we have this experience where people have to choose early on where they're going to send their kids to school. And many times that choice is beholden to their access to transportation. So I think, from an equity perspective, especially when we're talking about equity in the future, it's the decisions that we make today that affect what opportunities our families, our communities, and our future holds. And so when we were coming up with all of the different permutations of what PiggyBack Network could look like, we've continued to focus on equity, because it's that piece that that everybody's been talking about. In any case, especially in this current COVID and George Floyd experience, where people have had time to actually think about and see what equity looks like, and more specifically, what inequality looks like. Something like transportation is foundational to making a change.
So over the months, we've been in situations where we've had to give our elevator pitches and try to impress judges and investors and VCs and things like that. And we had to narrow it down with this big grand vision. What are the values? What are the benefits? Why your company? Why PiggyBack? So we broke it down to 3 different points. And one is, it works because of trust. We're looking at parents, offering parents a ride, and just being a parent and having that access to a child of your own, and having that, I would treat your child the same way I treat my child. I know how to install a car seat. Actually, that's one of the biggest response that parents have is, what about car seats? What about car seats? Because we know that's on the tip of our brain when we're thinking about someone else giving a ride. So that trust coming from drivers that actually drive their own children is one of the biggest aspects of why we're going to proceed with this and why it's going to succeed. Building community. I've got 2,400 friends on Facebook. Does that mean I have a community of 2,400 people? No, not at all. Those are people that might go and laugh at something that I write, might go and say, oh, you're a fool, that was funny. But when it comes to community, when it comes to people you can actually depend on, lean on, that you would trust with things, I'm still limited to my immediate family and a few other handful of friends. That is my core, the people that I consider when I need to lean on them, when I need to trust in them to do something. And it's not easy to extend that to a member of the school where my daughter goes, or somewhere that's a parent that's at my daughter's ballet studio or something like that, because we're passing pleasantries. We're, hello, how are you? How was your weekend? Hello, how are you? How was your weekend? Oh, it's snowing again. We're not taking time to actually build communities with that, because we just don't have time. There's just other stuff going on. And with PiggyBack, we hope to take advantage of these relationships, and that we're able to build community out of these parent relationships. Third, one of the most important parts is we're giving back to the communities that we serve. So in addition to providing transportation to a lot of these after-school activities, the park districts, the sports leagues, the dance studios, the arts, fine arts departments that lost a lot of volume with COVID, and even pre-COVID, families are just trying to juggle. Do I have time to do all of that? We're trying to put bodies into their programs. And we also have a portion where we donate a portion of the profits from the rides that touch those places. We donate them back to the community. And that's another big piece of what we're trying to put together. Donald. I see Marcus has got a question. Let me try to get to that. So Marcus's question, do the drivers have to be parents, or does the model extend to other members of the community? So right now, if you want to drive and you're not tied to a family, the benefit of driving is that you get points so that you can send a child. What we offer right now is a non-parent driver can sign up as part of a family. You can be a driver for a family that has children. You can earn points for that family to use to send their child. So you can work out a system. My sister-in-law might drive for us when she doesn't have any children, but she's in an area where when she drives back and forth, she can pick up a child that has a need, and she'd be able to accumulate points for me. I'd be able to use those points for my daughter. That's the thought behind that. So getting into the numbers real quick, and again, we'll talk more on the numbers at the investment piece, but we're going to touch a little bit on a couple of markets. The rideshare market, what we know is Uber and what we know is Lyft, booming. 61 billion from 2018 is projected to grow almost threefold to 2025. These are pre-COVID numbers. And we know it's increased since then. Quarter of the US population uses rideshare, again, pre-COVID numbers. And we also looked at what the carpooling process is right now for all commuters, not just parents. Americans drive, 77% of us that drive to work, one car, one person, no passenger. That's less than 10% of commuters using carpool. That number's dropped. That 10% today was at one point 20% back in the 70s and 80s. So although we've become more busy, using less of a network to help each other out. So it's something to through this. Global numbers for carpooling, the enrolled numbers have doubled from 50 million to 110 million in just 3 years up to 2019. And looking at who's joining, those members between 16 and 24 years old, they're going to be parents in the next 15 years. That slice of the pie right there, they're not going to remember a time where you couldn't order a car on your phone. And when they have kids and there's the Lyft and Uber for everyday pickup, they're going to also see PiggyBack right there as a way to schedule rides for their children. We'll try to address Jasmine's question. Reason behind decreasing carpooling. So the articles that we pulled on that, biggest thing was trust, Jasmine. That's parents are not trusting other individuals with their children. We're a very lawsuit heavy culture. So I'm assuming a lot of that lends to that. And then just I think talking to a lot of parents, a lot of us put the responsibility on our shoulders. It's my child, I'm responsible for it. And we take on that burden and we say, I'll stress myself out, it's on me.
Yeah, I'll add too, just from a culture perspective of independence, right? And especially then to the concept of building community. I'll blame social networking in general, because as Ish mentioned, we have lots of friends on the computer, but we don't always talk to our neighbor. But what I remember from growing up is that we talked to our neighbors, and those were the people who we asked for rides from. From a PiggyBack network perspective, though, one of the concepts around the exchange of goods and services in the form of points enables a driver or a family to not be solely reliant on one individual or another. And I think that also leads in some form or fashion to the decrease of commuting and sharing, because people don't want to be dependent on others, but not being dependent on your community is what has led in some form or fashion to like the disruption of community. And so we're hoping, I hear somebody not on mute. I think that's you talking, Camille. Uh, um, so with Piggyback Network, what we want to do is increase the number of carpools by also increasing what the community means to a household, but also ensuring that the way we define community is not solely bound or is not restricted to where you live, but rather it's a function of the activities that you are participating in, whether it's trying to do something from an extracurricular perspective or trying to get your kid to a school that may be out of your way, but not out of the way of your neighbor.
Thank you. Let's move forward. The second market, we talked about the rideshare market. The second market that we're keeping an eye on is the extracurricular activity market, because while this is definitely going to help people get to and from school, it's also going to help with after school activity. Everyone that's worked a 9 to 5 and that has children know that the school year day does not end at the same time that your 9 to 5 ends. And there's that gap. There's that gap that has families rushing from the office to the pickup line, and it's chaotic. And you need something to do to hold that kid down for 2 hours, hour and a half. You're going to pay for it. You're going to have somebody, take out of their day to do it. And parents are paying to keep their kids active. There's the benefit of all the kids that are involved in extracurricular activities. There's studies on how something like chess can improve the brain patterns, and there's all these different, physical activities to get into. People look at scholarships at a young age. Those numbers are still climbing. Again, this is pre-COVID numbers. This is $22 billion across the U.S. spent on extracurricular activities. And we're only seeing that going up as parents are crafting out these activities for their children. And we plan on helping that out and also giving more access to these activities. Next slide. So the revenue streams for Piggyback, the way we make our money. When the families that are making the request, they land a match. Now there's an offering route and a requesting route, and they overlap. Family making the request will purchase points, Piggyback points, that covered the cost of that ride. Myself, our ride is 17 miles from my oldest daughter from our home, 57-minute drive. It will cost us $18 one way. That's about as long as any ride that I've put into the calculator in Chicago so far. $18 to save me from a 57-minute rush hour commute, rain, snow, all of that stuff. I would gladly pay that each way. The driver would get half of that paid to them in points. So now the driver's getting points to drive that 17 miles, and they use their points to send their child at a later time. Piggyback is keeping a portion of those points. So while it costs to send, you get paid to drive, a portion of that transaction stays in the bank with us. And that's how we're working it out. Okay, next slide. There is competition out there, regional competition. These are all places that have their own fleets of drivers, the paid drivers. There's usually some type of restriction on mileage or distance that they drive or duration that they drive, and they're going to cost a lot more than what we're offering because they are paying these drivers, they're maintaining the vehicles, and they're pretty much priced at a point where a lot of typical families cannot afford to handle these. Two are on the East Coast, one is out of California, there's one that's out of Texas, and we got a question from Jasmine. Explain how you're monetizing the points, please. Donald, can you bring up the pricing page? Actually, Jasmine, can we say that for the Q&A? We're almost through with this, and then we can get to the Q&A. That can be the first question.
Sorry, too many questions.
It's important, man. That's important. As long as you come with dollars after the questions, we love it. All right. So the competition is a different form of a paid van, and we'll get to some of the paid van questions during the Q&A. Price point is the biggest thing. Price point is the biggest thing. Then there's reliability. Then there's, who's actually doing the driving, and, parents. There's a host of complaints around it where we think if it's the individualized one-on-one model, the way I trust my brother, my sister-in-law, my in-laws, my parents, now I have a Piggyback driver and they're one of my trusted parents. That's the problem. Slide, Donald. So our idea, and one of the reasons we're hitting these long-winded explanations, these imagine trying to elevator pitch this to someone. There's so many differences to the way that this works and the way that other products work, services work. We're changing the narrative of how we think of transportation, how we think of community, and how we think of our own vehicles. It's coming in at a price point that's kind of wowing people, but it's still not exactly being caught on because there's all of these, that sounds different, that sounds different. And to that, we've been responding with 5 years ago, somebody would have told you that you could rent out a room in your house to a total stranger and make profit off of it. You might think that's crazy, and Airbnb is commonplace these days. Turo, the car renting app, commonplace these days. My brother lives near the airport, puts his car on Turo, brings in $2,000. It's like, it's nothing. It's a problem. It exists. It exists years ago. The concept was crazy, but it grows on people when it works. And we're looking to change the narrative to provide something that's gonna, ease the stresses of these parents, increase the access, and something that can only grow. It's a puzzle piece that can only grow. Prioritizing the importance of investment in the community, putting the dollars back, putting the bodies back, just teaching people to meet their community. Like Donald said before, you used to know your neighbor, you used to be able to trust your neighbor. Now it's a wave because you're in a rush. Even when we're working from home, we're in a rush. Focusing on building strong families, networks of families, not just the families, and we're investing in local businesses and community partnerships. Right. So that's the end of the first piece, and we do have time for a Q&A. Since Jasmine raised the question about pricing, Donald, why don't you go ahead to the website, to the pricing page. So at any point, a user, this is public, you don't have to be signed in to get to this page. A user can put in their source address and their target address, as well as the day and the time, and they can identify what it will cost them in PiggyBack points. The points are roughly $1 to a point, but there's packages you can purchase to give yourself a benefit. The more points you purchase, the cheaper it is per point. So if you go as high as $85, you can get 100 points. But if you go down to $20, you only get 20 points. So at $20, it's a point per dollar. Up to 85, you get a discount for it. So that's kind of how that works. Every ride you take, you're going to be deducted points, and the driver is going to earn points. So here's Donald putting in an address, and it's going to calculate how many points it's going to cost for that duration. So this is a 30-minute trip that's going to cost you $10. Driver's going to get half of that, about 400 points.
Hey, Ish, can I ask a question on that one?
Go for it.
At what point do you know that you will have a match, right? So if I'm a parent trying to say, all right, I gotta, I don't know, I gotta get my kid to football practice tomorrow or something. How does that work just in terms of the matching process, and when do I have that locked in, and what assurance do I have that ride is locked down?
Sure. So if you're looking for next day, this isn't going to work. So just the concept of the match, once you're in the system, we have an algorithm that's going to match the requests to the responses to the offerings. Once you're matched with someone, you both are notified, and then there's another step where you're actually going to meet in person. So even if you were to match with somebody the day you put it in, you guys would still have to schedule your families, whoever you want to be involved, if it's the driver and the kid, if it's the driver, their kid, if it's both parents, even the non-driving parent, you guys would make arrangements to meet in person and have a second screening. And this is that extra level of trust we were talking about. So it's not just gonna be blue sedan driving to pick up your kid. It's gonna actually be Joe that you've met, that you have a relationship with. You've got his cell phone number, and you've met his family, and you've had a test drive with them or something like that. So we're looking at realistically about a week at the minimum between you putting your request in and actually starting the process, just to be safe.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's assuming you've got your route already offered. We're running into a lot of situations where the routes that are requested are outnumbering the routes that are offered.
Hey,
Make sense?
Donald, this is Jasmine.
Hey, Jasmine.
Do you have some numbers on your current level of participation? I know you just started, but do you have some figures on current?
Yes. So we launched mid-August and the public school systems kicked off late August. Since the start of the school year, we've got 310 families signed up. So it's a plus on that side. Heavily leaning towards families that are only requesting. These are not our ideal situations where we would have someone saying, hey, I need 1 or 2 days where I just can't make it. I can do the other drives. Most of these people are looking between 4 and 5 days a week. They need pickup. They are not in positions to drive. They don't own a car. They've been dropped by their school bus routes. They just changed school. They're not in positions. So all of these different things are leaning us to a very heavily requested customer set, and we're looking to balance that out with advertising, with targeted advertising towards the driving families. So we've had 45 routes driven in that time, and that's with a very small number of drivers at this point. If we could find the drivers to match all of the requests that we have, we would have 152 rides a month. That's our request count right now, 152 requests.
Do I have a limit on the number of questions I can ask?
We're time boxed, and there's going to be investment questions at the end as well. But we would like to kick the investment session off in about 4 minutes. So if it's money related and it can wait, then we can do that. If it's process related, keep them going.
It's more on safety, insurance liability. So I know you talked about background checks.
Sure.
What about insurance, like liability insurance? Are
So,
they required to get liability insurance?
right. So the background check, I'll just point that out real quick. 4-point background check. Every driver goes through national level background criminal, county level criminal, motor vehicle test, as well as the sexual registry. And that's refreshed every 2 months. So we do have that for every driver. As far as the insurance, the process has changed since we started. We did have a process in plan before COVID where each major car insurance offered rideshare insurance that you could add onto your regular policy. And that would have cost about $20 a year, $15 a year, depending on the branch. We were going to handle that for all of our drivers. Just before we launched, Uber and Lyft keep going through these different changes, and now the process has changed. You have to be an Uber or Lyft driver in order to get rideshare insurance. The underwriters don't touch anything else. So that's through the major insurance companies. We're now looking at getting our own custom policy, similar to the Lyft and the Uber, and it's just not going to be backed by a Progressive or a State Farm. It's going to be an independent company that does that, and they've already given us a quote on the premium. So we're ready to go in and do that. So there will be a PiggyBack corporate insurance that's going to cover drivers during the time they're engaged in a PiggyBack.
Okay, I promise this is my last question.
I doubt it.
But I'm thinking critically. I mean, I'm coming from this, I'm not a parent, but when you're putting kids together, are they grouped by age? Because I mean, parents are not only the liability, like say you put a teenager with a 4-year-old, like that would for me as a parent, that would be a concern.
Sure. And that particular reason is why we want that second level of screening to involve the families themselves. Us as PiggyBack to say, no kids that are greater than 10 years apart should be matched. Not every 10-year-old, not every 15-year-old, not every 4-year-old are alike. But if you know your child is a bully, is going to beat up anybody that's smaller than them, it's probably not a good idea to put them in the same backseat. So yes, that is something that we want individual families to be able to work on and let them decide, hey, it's working great, or no, it's not.
But do you feel that should be left up to the families and it should not be something, because that's a liability for PiggyBack?
We definitely feel that should be the family.
Yeah, I'll add relative to the screening process. If you think about how you assign that risk, the risk is among parents, such that the expectation is that the two people who agree to share the ride recognize that open lines of communication exist, which is why it's community, right? So if I know my child's temperament, and I've shared with you my child's temperament, then we have an agreement. But in the case where, you know, your child then comes home and says that my child was picking on them, you're not locked into that experience, right? But from a legal liability perspective, because we are not necessarily assigning the driver, but we are making the match, that expectation of trust and, you know, kids behaving as they do is among that individual partnership, I would say. Right, because it's a great question, but if you think about it, we wouldn't be able to say what your child represents because we're not screening children. But it's important for the parents to trust one another, and therefore it's important for the parents to actually talk. So a very critical portion of the screening process and PiggyBack network in general, from a cultural narrative perspective, is we expect you to interact with this individual more than just, hey, your ride's here, get in the car, right? That's not what we want. What we're striving for is, hey, John is here. Tell Mary we said, hey, see you later, love you. That type of experience. So it's not the Uber model of you get in random person's car and you don't hear any feedback. Instead, it's the carpool community model that says that you know, communication is open and that you have flexibility if and when you feel that something isn't right or something doesn't feel right.
Hey, Donald, are you logged in as a user right now to the website? We have a question about
That's protection. I think you should have it like some kind of clause that absolves you of any liability.
Oh
yeah. From a legal perspective, we're gonna have language locked up for sure.
Yeah, we have a draft of an agreement between the drivers and the parents that covers quite a bit of bodily harm, things like that. The bullying, your kid is just being a dick, like that part. We have engaged. Donald, are you logged in? I want to get to the car seat thing while I talk about this. Are you logged in as a user here? I want to show the how you select the car seat, and then we're going to jump into the investment thing. But Jasmine D, we have a friend that does child psychology, and she sees adults as well as kids. And I'm on the verge of getting her to give some video tutorials to our members, both the drivers as well as the passenger families. And it points out ways to read the children, ways to read the parents, ways to sort of gives a list of questions, things to ask, things to consider along the way, things that, you know, if a child is being silent, things that if a parent, an adult is being silent, things that you could use to trigger, because there are a lot of things involved with, you know, being around other families that some people just aren't aware of. So that type of thing, we are keeping an eye on that. But at the same time, we are relying on parents to be responsible parents and parent their children. So this is the question about car seats. When you request or offer, there is a car seat description, and you can either say you have them or you say this is the one you need. You can say you're providing it. You can say I need you to provide it. So that is one of the things that we're doing, considering we're doing children of all ages. So that is in here. And if a driver needs to, you know, pick up a car seat before the route, it's got to be worked out with the parent that's doing the request. Okay. COVID vaccinations, we are not requiring vaccinations. Again, that is up to the families to discuss. That's for adults as well as children, now that the children vaccine is available. We do have some indicators that show once the children's vaccine is readily available. There are some parents that are willing to start driving. Could be just, word of mouth, could just be, making us feel good. But I do believe that we'll turn, a corner now that that's available. But, the data will show. All right, I think if I didn't get to your question, can you just shout it out? But I think we covered how dedicated the parents will be when they find out about all the responsibilities of children. That's something we're gonna have to figure out, Bethel. I know you're coming from an educating background, so that's definitely something that we're gonna have to figure out. And there is no binding contract that says you can't say that's the last time I'm driving. If it doesn't work out, you just don't accept the next ride. Nothing's locked in. All right, I do want to jump to the investment piece. Are there any other questions?
Okay,
we also said that we would do a 5-minute break.
Oh yeah, true.
If you want to do that, but we also went past our 10 minutes for Q&A. So we're.
Will there be like a rating system to be like, this driver's good, this driver's not good?
There will be a feedback system, whether we make that public right away or whether we kind of watch how the feedback is looking. What we don't want is, how ratings can be skewed. We will take all the and consider it, but whether we're gonna blast that on your profile as a driver, we'll have to see what it's looking like at that time.
Can I make one quick note here? This sounds like a hybrid, right? It's not just a comparison to Uber. It's also a comparison to sites like SitterCity and nannywhatever.com, where there is some expectation and responsibility on the parents' part that they will actually meet and interview the nanny, and that the site is really just there to do background checks and preliminary, this person's not a criminal, but there is an expectation that as a parent, you will go through the proper channels and be responsible and interview a potential babysitter, okay? So same way here. There's an expectation that you will interview a potential person that's gonna be in your car. There is a responsibility that's not necessarily wholly responsible for a PiggyBack, similar to how it would be nannies.com or sittercity.com. And so, I mean, that's how I'm kind of understanding it. And I think in terms of, you cannot mandate COVID expectations. You would not be covered under the, because for Illinois, we can't do that anyway right now. It has to be optional. There's a bunch of state regulations that go into place. And that's also the option of the parent. If I want to say, I only want to work with someone that's COVID vaccinated, they can individually do that. But you guys may not have that same, you can't make that mandate because the state doesn't require it and you don't meet the requirement for the federal government. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like, so some of these are optional, right?
So Marquina, you're not going to charge us the legal rate for all that information.
No, that's free. Okay.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah,
yes, we had several conversations with friends and attorneys going into it, and that's exactly how we were looking at it. We're facilitating a match, and then there's a responsibility on the parents to complete that process. So yes, we don't want to act like we're the employer and that the driver's our employee and that they're under our mandate to do this and that. That's the idea there.
is that why you guys went with the point system too? Because I think
point system instead of dollars, yes.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. I thought that's pretty smart. Okay.
That's smart. Thank you. All right, so we have an option for a break. If you gotta move around, shake your legs. If people want to just say, hey, they're here. We're gonna take a break a bit, and then we're gonna rush to the investment piece. And you're gonna open up your dollars.
Yeah, we'll give a 2-minute break. So, so it's 7:50. Let's get started again. 7:50 Central. I'll see if I can find some music. Oh, maybe I'll find one of these commercials with Ish on it. Hold on.
9:13, we've all heard about those bus shortages at the beginning of the school year when many children were left without transportation. A local father decided he was going to do something about the driver shortages. He's invented an online platform that takes advantage of carpooling to make sure no child is left behind. Joining us is Ismael El-Amin to tell us about his new app. Good morning to you. So nice to have you on this morning.
Good morning, Sylvia.
Okay, kind of walk us all through what made you decide to come up with this? What happened?
Sure. So I am a CPS grad. I came out of high school in 1999, went off to college, got a software engineering job now as an IT consultant, and I'm raising 3 children. They are going into 3 different locations every day. My wife and I both have cars. My wife and I both work. And we're looking at, okay, how do we schedule to get our kids to school, to after school activities, and still keep some sanity about ourselves? You know, it's like a full-time job with the scheduling. So what I'm looking at is there's cars on the road that have extra seats in them, and there's parents that are doing these drives every day. And on the other side of things, there's a lot of families that are not able to get their children to the schools that they desire, the after school programs, the extracurricular activities and things like that. And I want them to be able to meet each other, to use the online platform to overlap and see who can help who out and make it affordable, make it reliable, and make it something safe for all parents.
Okay, so
Okay, I think that's been 10 minutes or 2 minutes. So is everybody, I can't see participants, so hopefully everyone is back. But we'll jump into the investor roadmap. And as a time check, it's 7:51. At 8:10, we'll want to be ready for Q&A again. Hopefully it's just back.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good.
Got my water. All right. So the reason for the call tonight, we're at a point where PiggyBack has, we've been in the market for a few months. We've been looking at how the responses have looked. I've been in a pitch competition and we've got ourselves lined up for a couple more where hopefully we're going to be pulling in some funds from that. We've got some grant applications that we're reaching out to, but we're seriously looking at raising some good funds, and we have a couple of different earmarked projects that we want to put that money to. So enter you guys, enter, the people that are within our lives that we want to give an opportunity to be part of this. And most people, when they hear about this, that are in the financial areas, that are in positions of equity, that are in positions of financing, they want to walk us straight to the top. Oh, I've got a VC, I've got people that invest in this, people that'll throw millions at you, that'll put you in incubators. And we've literally said, pump the brakes. That's not the way we want to go with this, not yet. We want to look into spreading the wealth. We want to look into all of these facts that are out there that talk about underserved markets and underserved communities where the wealth is just not given a chance to grow. If PiggyBack grows into something, I don't want to get to the point where Donald and I are soaring and we're unreachable and we become these great big figures that you all used to know. And that's not even a joke. I want everybody to be able to benefit from this. We want everybody to be able to benefit from this. So the first thing we're going to set up, that we've already set up, is the Friends and Family Seed Round. And it's a Friends and Family Round that's unique because it's offering equity. You guys will have options to be a part of PiggyBack, to own it as it grows, so that when we have these large VCs down the line that say, wow, this is really taking off, traction looks great, you guys are raising a lot of amount, you're spreading all over the city, all over the state, all over the country, we want to back you to turn into the next level. When we get back, you get back. So our roadmap has got 4 different sections to it. Where we are right now is in the green, the Friends and Family round. Next is we've got the proven market traction. The questions that we heard earlier, how's it going? How's the sales looking? We're able to answer that with profit statements, with revenue statements, with growth statements. Then comes the spot in blue, the Series A price round, and then comes expansion. Tonight, we're going to touch on the first 2 parts, and that's where you guys are involved at this stage, all right? So today, it's more of a part-time hobby with potential. It's a thought. It's something that we've been putting together, that we've been coding at for the last 3.5 years, that we've gotten enough pushing behind us, enough backing where it's like, let's throw it out there and actually make it public and make it marketable. Self-funded, all coming from our banks, our time, our efforts, everything you see, website, logo, the videos, all of this stuff's coming out of our pockets. Getting the media rotation, the concept is growing and shining in pitch competitions, and it's gaining support. That's today. At the Friends and Family Race, which we just kicked off, which is going to last through February 14th of next year, that's where we're going to try to raise a number of funds, and it's going to help us to get to a point where we can take it to the next level. Contributions start as low as $250. And what that gets you is a simple agreement for future equity. It's called a SAFE. It's a contract that says once equity is available in this company, you're first in line to have that equity. We're raising it with partnership with Seed at the Table. And is Morgan on? I don't see the representative from Seed on, but a great company, minority-owned company that we've been working with, that's actually doing the legwork to help us reach out to individuals like yourselves who typically would not be eligible for equity shares in a startup. There's something that they call Accredited Investor that's got a certain net worth, that's got a certain amount of annual income that typically these opportunities are involved in. We're able to address you directly and address anyone that qualifies as, you know, a friend or family or person in our network because of our partnership with Seed at the Table. And if you go to their website, that's in the link that I sent you, you'll kind of read through some of the rules and regulations there. They're a partnership with the SEC and all of their accreditations and things like that. And that's what helps us give the ability to have the investment start as low as $250. We're also taking up to $50,000. That's the max that we're putting on it. We want to make sure no individual or company is able to come in and say, you know, screw the little guy, I want to buy everything. We're not allowing that at this point. So the impact is that it's now the idea has some backing. Now we got some money. Now we don't have to worry about our own funds. Now my daughters can eat again because I'm not spending my money to get us to the next step. All right, next step. So where that money would go, we're applying for a patent. Full patent is going to run us between $12,000 and $15,000. We do have those contracts, agreements, and disclosures that we spoke about earlier. Any disclosure between the parent and the driving parent and the requesting parent, those things cost lawyers, and lawyers cost change. A safety handbook, supporting investment, paying the different businesses that help us get involved in the investments and things like that. The corporate auto insurance that I spoke of before, the quote that we have on that is between $15,000 and $20,000. And we haven't really finalized that number yet. We're in talks with that. So those costs to really legitimize ourselves are starting to grow. But what it does is, as everybody's mentioned, it lowers our exposure and it limits the chance of litigation at an early stage. Also looking at marketing, we know we're not hitting the families that we need to. And we know we need to penetrate and find those communities and find those individuals where they are. We're looking at TV ads, we're looking at radio ads, quick spots on the internet, videos, different campaigns, and looking to price that out over the next couple of months. Focus groups, digital marketing, everything like that. Also upgrading our technology. I sat at this chair for years, overnight, Googling, taught myself how to write Python scripts, how to build websites, all of this stuff. It's not easy. I would much rather pay somebody else to carry it on and to upgrade, and that's what the plan is. So we're looking to raise funds to get it going on the technical side, automate things so that we're not sitting manual things and checking emails and having to stop what we're doing and using this computer because it's got the license for Microsoft Word and the other one doesn't. It's too cheap to pay for that. So we're looking to get everything automated and cleaned up technically, and the ballpark for that is on this. Right. All right. So after we've worked with that section, raising the funds and allocating that money to those different earmarks, we'll get to the market traction that we've been looking for. And that's where we've gotten our message to the drivers and we're starting to put those drivers on the road and they're matching with that shown customer base that we've already identified, and at that point, we're making profit over profit. We can look at our months and our growth, and we can be able to determine factors to move next. And we're having our money that was seeded actually create other money. And that's where we really get in a position to go to the other investment firms and say, hey, look, now we're ready to talk. Okay. So those are our first two phases. We're not going to walk through the Series A, because that's down the line, but that's where we are tonight. And what we're asking, if you are able to get involved in.
Yeah, I'll jump into right before we start this Q&A, but I'll add that for those who know the relationship that Ish and I have, I create the opportunity for argument, and he and I had a long, drawn out back and forth about what it looked like to include into our friends and family round the non-accredited investor. And I would say if people have follow-up questions, for sure we'll make ourselves available one-on-one and individually. But I think it's notable and commendable Ish's dedication to ensuring that we don't first reach out to the people who we think we know that would give us $1 million, for example, because with that $1 million comes two things. One, less control of the direction. And then two, we become a part of the system that continues to exclude the community. But if our solution, platform, and guiding principles are all around equity, it was very important, and it remains to be very important, that we start with equity even at the very beginning. So I would say do a little bit of research, right? Find out what an accredited investor is. Feel free to send us a question. If you go on, actually, let me break out of here for a second. If you go to the Seed at the Table website, we're out here. But if you scroll around their website, it will give a little bit more information on what it means to be able to crowdfund during the initial investment phase, that is friends and family. And what we think is that it's an excellent opportunity if you assume, I guess you'd have to assume and believe that the things that we try to do are generally successful, right? And that's what makes this conversation here, maybe even though we're recording, it is fairly intimate. You all know our relative success in life. And it's that success in life that traditional VCs have access to that our friends and family have not. And so, for example, my mother will have an opportunity to benefit from the success of her son, as opposed to her being passed over individually. But then, right, there's that conversation of, well, my son has made a lot of money now. He gives me something, or, he bought me a house, instead of I bought my own house because I was able to invest in my son's dreams, and they took off. And then when a VC came in, the VC made it rain and all that. And then we all get the party, you know what I mean? So I think it's something to be said, commended, and appreciated. The idea of what Seed at the Table represents, but also the idea that it's a core tenet of PiggyBack Network as an organization, that we expect to always be focused on the community, and more specifically focused on equitable outcomes for everyone. So I'll pause there and we can jump into Q&A. As a time check, it's 8:05. So we're not in a rush, but we have 10 minutes of Q&A, and then if others want to stay on, we can.
So I have a question. This is Marquina speaking. So the liability piece, I think that's easier than some of the other things that I see, mostly because that's really just having your documentation in order. If you guys wanted to, you guys do this at work, compliance training. You could have a training for potential drivers of responsibilities and have it on the site and information for parents to say, we have educated both parties on this, you know, they assume the risk and we have been responsible in terms of what our responsibility would be. That's easy peasy, you can work that through. But from what I'm seeing is that a primary concern that I have is, how are you going to get eligible families who are eligible drivers to sign up? Because that piece is really important to increase routes and the availability and success for this model, is the manpower and individuals. So that piece, I'm like, what's your time frame, right? Have you determined a time frame and how you will add certain quantities of families who can be eligible drivers, and not just families that have a need, right? Because that's not going to benefit you right now.
Yeah, so Marquina, that's exactly where we're headed. To the first piece you spoke about with the trainings and things like that. What you just called out is exactly how the corporate car insurance is going to price us out. If we have training, if we have a security handbook, if we have agreements, our premium is less, because that's lowering our liability. So we have had those conversations within the last couple of weeks. The second piece, identifying the driver. Anyone that's been around me in the last month, that's been the top priority, is identifying these networks of parents. I see them, I know them, I am around them. I watch these parents at school, and I'm just like, how can I get the concept? If I could sit them all down for an hour and let them understand that this is how it works, I'd be confident that I could bring them on. But it's just the passing phrases that I'm throwing at them that is just, I gotta get into their ear the way that they absorb information and change that mindset around to understand the benefit here. I definitely agree with you. That's the corner we're trying to turn.
I'll jump into a little bit. I won't flip around slides, but there's a line item that we have on the topic of what we're calling Uber native people. So from an investment roadmap perspective, but then also a longevity conversation, what we expect is that in 10 to 15 years, or maybe it's 5 to 10, 7 to 10, let's call it 7 to 15, the people who have been traditionally using rideshare capabilities will start to become the parents that we are talking about today, but they will already be indoctrinated into the concept of tech-enabled rideshare. And so it won't be as novel to that group as it is to us who are parents today and who, you know, shoulder the burden individually, or our children don't get to go to the sporting activity, or they don't get to go to the better school. So the expectation is that we will use both the culture that's coming along with interacting with school districts, parent networks, employee resource groups inside of corporations. And then we have on here this line item that says sports leagues, but ultimately it's the extracurricular activity providers in neighborhoods that would drive the adoption. Because if let's call it a gymnasium or a gymnastics, I always get confused with like a gymnastics gym, but ultimately like a gym where people do ballet and gymnastics. If they can drive more bodies through their door, it benefits them. And so we expect those organizations to partner with us to help generate more traction, specifically around the driving parent. But it is a cultural shift, right? We have to encourage people to believe that allowing your child to get a ride with your neighbor sometimes is better than you sitting in the parent's parking lot or sitting in the parent's waiting room. But that is what people are most comfortable with right now. And change is disruptive, right? But we expect, as we work through the change with the current demographic and generation, in 5 to 10 years, everything changes because the individuals that we will be talking to will have always been taking rides, whether they take rides to school, they take rides to and from the airport. And there's now this whole group that are getting their food delivered to them, right? So from a distribution perspective, people will expect that someone will help them out with their rides and that they will also be prepared to drive.
And there's also existing carpool networks out there, parents that have already exchanged information, and you take a day, I take a day. Plan on identifying them and sitting them down and just kind of picking it apart. How did you get involved? What were some of the things you thought about? Would you be open to involving other parents? What are some of your concerns with that? So those types of focus groups and penetrating those types of mindsets is what we've been looking into doing on a mass scale.
Yeah, Ish, that's what actually I was going to ask. Well, first of all, thank you to you and Donald for offering this opportunity to friends and family. I wanted to know more about like the needs assessment that you've done. And I see that you're targeting Chicago, but I was looking on your website, you're not like specifically saying like which geographies or what particular neighborhoods. I'm not familiar with Chicago, but would there be traction in certain areas? Like, have you done a needs assessment to see where this could potentially take off, where you could expand to, and if it gets traction in a certain area? I mean, I'm from New York, so I know it would work in certain areas of Long Island where it would not work in Queens, for example. So I just know different areas have a different community feel and a different mindset and a trust that it wouldn't necessarily work.
We definitely have a kind of a sequence of markets that we want to hit up, particularly the areas where there's more driving than public transportation, where there's more outdoor activities, things like that. We've got our ear to the ground in Atlanta, Miami, a couple of other places. Some cities have reached out to us and are interested in the solution, possibly doing it at a mass scale. So we are sort of like ear to the ground, waiting to hear how those things turn out. All of that is going to require us to be ready to hit a very large scale if we get those types of opportunities. And that's another reason for the crowd raise at this point. So if we're able to do the crowdfunding and get to a point that allows these medium cities to say, hey, at a city level, we want to introduce you, at the school board level, we want to introduce you, support you, and possibly even, pay for some of the parent fees, then we want to be able to tackle that because we've had those conversations and we've been in those at that table where they're saying this is exactly what we could use to get us out of this funk. So we're ready to hit those markets.
Hey Ish, what happens if you guys don't hit the 250?
So two different milestones with this raise. The first milestone is 100,000. So if we scroll down here, the 100,000 is the limit that we set ourselves as a minimum. If we don't raise 100,000 by the close in February, every investor gets their dollar back, nothing's lost. If we hit go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that 100 is only through the means that you've described, right? Only through the friends and family of non-accredited investors?
Yes, through this portal. If this portal itself doesn't raise the 100,000, then every investor within this portal would get their money back. That's our agreement through the SEC. That's what we've bonded to. Once we hit 100,000.
And this portal yep. And this portal is only non-accredited investors, correct?
No, we can have anyone come through here of any status. We did set a cap of 50K. So if there's a venture capitalist that wants to put in funds, we did set a cap. They cannot invest more than 50,000 because we do want to limit it to the average person. We do have plans down the line to, increase that as the demand, dictates. But for this particular raise, we wanted to keep it between $200 and $50,000.
Got it.
And any outside funds, if it's just an outside agreement investment, it would not impact this raise.
Hey, it's just Sheila. I have a quick question. First, I want to say this is a wonderful idea. I'm really excited about it. I want to know if we wanted to invest, is it a way to invest on a monthly basis, And is it something that we can continuously invest in, or something that we have to do like just a one-time payment of?
So you can make multiple contributions through seed. If you wanted to continue it past February, we would just have you set up on a new contract and it wouldn't go through the portal, because our portal access is probably going to end once the raise is done. But yes, if you wanted to make continuous contributions, as long as it's 250 or more, you could buy multiple safes through the portal. Yes.
When you say 250 or more, it needs to be 250 every time we can contribute. Like,
right. If you're going to contribute through this portal, every transaction has to at least be $250.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. So if the plan was to do like $50 5 times, just wait until you have that saved up and do one of two. If that's what you mean.
Gotcha.
And who was the question before, Sheila?
Ish, I think that was me, Marcus.
Okay, Marcus. All right. Are there any other questions? Oh, so back to the limits. Okay. So the 100,000.
I'll do a quick time check too. It's 8:15. Just to be mindful of everybody's time. But keep going.
Thank you. All right, so the first limit is the 100,000. If we never make 100,000, everybody gets their dollars back from the seed investments. If we hit 100,000, that's when PiggyBack is actually able to go into the escrow account and start using that money towards the different causes that we've identified. So our rush is to get to 100,000 as soon as possible, and then we leave the door open for whoever else wants to contribute on the way to February 14th when this is going to close out. So that 250,000, we can go over that if we continue to get contributions. It's just going to be listed as we've reached our max. If we don't make that 100,000, everybody gets it back. If we make the 100,000, the money's being put to use, and everybody that's contributed will get the contract for their safe, their simple agreement for future equity. It's going to list down how much you contributed, and there's a discount of 20% equity that each of those investors is going to have. So you investing at this period versus you investing down the line once the equity is available to be purchased, you'll get that discounted 20% equity from investing early. That's part of the deal with the SEC. Ms. Lemmy, I see you put a question out. How do we check the status of the dollar target once we invest? This page is open to the public. So where Donald is right now, this is actually in the emails that I sent out, the portal. You can see this at any given point. So you can see that there's 4 total backers right now. You can see the total amount that we've raised. You'll have access to this dashboard at any given point. What is your plan to manage this as you expand? So the investor roadmap talks about our expansion. I think that's what you're asking, Gretel. I don't know what you mean to manage this. We do have a part in our roadmap where we are hiring on staff. That comes with our Series A, where we're asking for a lot more money, and that's probably going to be at the venture capitalist level. And we're starting to hire out. The Series A funding here identifies the hiring, the positions that we've identified as being key, so that Donald and I don't have to wear so many hats as we start expanding to different cities and really getting up and running. And that way we take our website to a mobile app and all of those different fun things. And before we end this, I want to say, if you guys do know people that are in the position of the startup process, I really think that the seat at the table concept is brilliant, because just the education and just opening up the door to things that we just don't really know about. A lot of people I know have great ideas, have great concepts, and you hit that wall where you're just not sure who else to reach out to. And this is us reaching that to us. This is us backing us. It's something that we've thought about over years. Like, this conversation tonight is something we've played out. What happens when it's time to actually go above and beyond? And so the 2.5 valuation, So with the revenue that we're making today, we aren't at a point to say, multiply this out by 10 years, this is what would work. So we did have to play with some numbers, play with some projections, play with some figures. What we calculated was based off of the number of rides that we want to target by the end of next year. We multiplied that out by 10 years. So at the end of 2022, we plan on profiting 250,000 or so, and multiply that out by 10 years, and it's 2.5 million. It's a very low estimate considering how it could grow, how it should grow. And that's, Jasmine, that's all in Chicago. Yes, that's just looking at one month. So our goal was to aim low at the initial valuation just because we don't have the revenue to prove that. We can change that valuation at any point once we start generating, once we identify the drivers. So we're not too worried about where it starts off. We just didn't want to get out there and jump out the gate and say, hey, we're a $10 million company when we're still sort of working on the concept.
Yeah, I'll add one note too, relative to the friends and family round and the valuation of a company. Friends and family fundraising is actually for a it's pre-valuation fundraising. So the reason for the SAFE is future equity. And the reason that it's future is because when and if, right? Because investing is when and if we are formally priced by an accredited capital financing firm, they are the ones who will actually give us our valuation. We expect that valuation to be in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 when it occurs. And it would be that valuation number that triggers the value of each SAFE. But let's say the company says, let's say, for example, a VC says, we believe that this company is worth $10 million and we're going to buy 10 million shares at $1 a piece. This is easy math, not, you know what I mean? But so don't focus on the math, but focus on the easy part. So if the company is going to buy 10 million shares at $1 a share, you would have $1.20 worth of shares times the number of shares you have, which is a function of the SAFE, right? So it's when the business is formally priced, you receive the price that the venture capital decides plus 20%. Traditionally, friends and family, because it's a non-priced round, people don't get equity, and therefore there's no conversation around what the valuation of the company may be. But as Ish mentioned, because we actually have a functioning product, we're able to do a at least, back of the napkin number calculation based on if we had this many rides from this number of community members, primarily with a focus on 1 or 2 school districts, we could conservatively say that we would be generating an amount of money. But in order to do that, we have to raise enough money to ensure that we can support that type of scale, right? Because right now, it's awesome, but it's the two of us, primarily Ish. So if somebody calls or somebody emails, it's going to our phone numbers, it's coming to our email addresses. And from a scaling perspective, that doesn't work as soon as we hit 10,000 individuals or even, one full school district. So that's a part of the math calculation, but also the future revenue potential. And that's how that math is being done.
I think I addressed everybody in the chat.
Oh, and I'll just I'll just end with this one. But feel free to have any more questions as we wrap up. But if interested in, and I believe that these links exist, but if you go to calendly.com/piggyback network, you should find availability for us to be able to have a chat if you'd like any type of follow-up. And I would say, a request is please also consider sharing with your network. Friends and family is for sure, close friends and family, but from a crowdfunding perspective, relative to the fact that we're not asking for 30,000 a pop, we understand that it's going to be based on volume. But the more people you have supporting you, then more likely, the more successful we, will be as a community. And so you'll see us sharing things on LinkedIn. You may see something on Facebook. Please feel free to forward any emails that you receive. And we'll probably try and cut up this recording so that it's available for public consumption. Feel free to share that as well. And I'll just end it by saying thank you very much. And we appreciate your time and all of the support that you've given us over the years.
And I'll just add one more thing. So when we looked at what the concept was, we'd rather have 1,000 people invest in $100 than 100 people invest in $1,000. We really want to spread this out, want to make this accessible and get people in the mindset of looking at equity and looking at, possibly owning instead of just contributing to some of the businesses that are out there. So that's the idea. So appreciate you guys giving us an hour and 26 minutes of your time. I will be staying up personally all night watching the register ringing. So, don't wait. Go to the portal, get started right now. I haven't heard a click yet. And I'm talking to all of you. So get with it because we got to grow. So appreciate the time and everybody. Hope to hear from you guys soon. And thanks a lot. Thanks, Donald. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Do the outro music. I was just kidding. I'm about to end it. All right.